So this is the AOC AGON Pro AG246FK, an esports focused monitor with a huge 540Hz refresh rate attached to it for that smooth competitive gameplay. Now, the last time I checked out something like this was when Zowie sent through a monitor, card in the corner if you did want to watch that, and that thing was just super expensive. But the good news here is that for this AGON Pro screen, the prices start from £600 on the AOC website, which to me sounds pretty good, seeing as it's really half price over the Zowie I looked at a few months ago. But is it any good? Let's check it out. As you could already imagine, the AGON Pro AG246FK is a TN panel that is 24 inches in size. It has an anti-glare treatment on there, not that it made much difference in my darkened room anyway, and it can produce a 1080p image. It's nothing special really when it comes to how sharp or how vibrant the monitor is. TN technology as a screen is pretty limited, but that's not the overall aim here, I don't think. Its biggest selling point is that 540Hz refresh rate that is going to appeal to those esports gamers out there. It can hit 400 nits of max brightness, and it is VESA certified display HDR 400 compatible. That's a long title there, but I wouldn't bother turning that on. It didn't make much of a difference for me, and it's not really anything I would scream about. Looks wise, this thing does look quite smart actually, and it is far superior to the Zowie panel we had before. It comes in a dark grey colour and has some nice and slim bezels around the three edges, though the bottom bezel does leave a little to be desired. It is branded heavily in the front with the AGON logo or AGON logo. I'm not keen, but it is certainly not an eyesore, and you know why they've done it for live sports events, so their logo will be in front and center on the screens the competitors are using. The stand it sits on, unfortunately, is a lighter gray than the bottom bezel, making it look as if AOC had some stands laying around and needed to get rid of them, so they paired them with the 246FK. The stand is large and it looks like a metal slab, even though everything is pretty much made of plastic here, I assure you. But again, I think they're doing it to keep the cost down and really focuses on what is important. The rear arm does have a tiny clip for cable management on there, which is a bit of a shame if you're plugging multiple devices into this thing, and it does have a pull-out headphone arm on the back and on the side. In terms of movement, the AGON Pro screen can tilt and swivel and also rotate if you wanted to use this screen in a vertical orientation. A round back does look a little bit strange and off kilter and not really quite symmetrical. The area where the monitor arm connects to has this strange pentagonal shape to it. I know that your monitor will probably be against a wall, which questions on whether it was worth designing it like this in the first place, but I suppose it's got me talking about it anyway in this video. It does glow, however, and gives some ambient light against your wall, but it doesn't react to what's on screen. It does, however, react to audio, and you can have rainbow color waves or solid color settings though, but no Philips Ambiglow type features here. You can also find two HDMI 2.0 ports, a DisplayPort 1.4 port, a couple of USB downstream ports which can produce USB 3.2 Gen 1 speeds, a kettle plug input for power, and a headphone out port for audio. It's all pretty basic back there, and one that can happily produce a 540Hz image at 1080p if you're using it with a PC, or at least 120Hz at 1080p for console gamers. Of course, you have to set these in your respective menus. It has got a little joystick which mimics the pentagonal shape again, but the menu is easy enough to navigate, and it's also got a little puck which has a few buttons for housing picture profile settings and navigating menus included too, if that is your thing. Talking about resolutions and frame rates though, the AG246FK is compatible with adaptive sync technology and has a range of 48 to 540Hz to work with. However, bear in mind that if you are a Windows 10 user, you will be capped at 500Hz on your refresh rate. Not the end of the world losing 40Hz by not upgrading to Windows 11, and of course DisplayPort offers the best way to connect a device to the monitor in terms of its frequency, and you can find that if you use HDMI. The adaptive sync will only work between 60 and a maximum of 240Hz on a vertical refresh. Now, this isn't really the end of the world at all, as you console gamers out there are pretty much capped with your refresh rates anyway, and if you're gaming on a PC, you really should be using DisplayPort where possible now in 2024. So my experience when I first plugged in the monitor, it chose my AOC 27G4X ICC color profile from a previous review that I did, again card in the corner. Now, for the sake of transparency and for testing purposes, I did change this back to the default sRGB IEC 61966 2.1 ICC profile before running color tests on the monitor. I also turned on the sRGB mode under the color setup on the OSD. There is an option called panel native here as well, where you can change the color temperature from warm to cool, and a user profile that you can manually set up yourself. yourself. But for testing purposes, I did stick with the default. Having your panel color gamut set to sRGB also locks you out of some game mode features like shadow control and game color, and also NBR sync. However, if you have sRGB mode switched on, you can also turn on game mode to one of these preset profiles and change these settings again. Running through my first test before the monitor was color calibrated and with a brightness setting of 70, which the sRGB mode gave me automatically, I saw my color gamut come back at 91% for sRGB, 66% Adobe RGB, 70% P3, and finally 63% NTSC. However, after a color calibration using my Data Color Spider Elite, I found that my sRGB was raised to 96%, while my Adobe RGB was now at 71%, my P3 at 71% again, and finally my NTSC at 66%. So I did see quite a small increase there. Moving on to brightness and contrast, Data Color gave me a reading of 980:1 contrast ratio at 100% brightness and a 990:1 at a 50% brightness. The white point did unfortunately suffer, coming in at 6200 at 100% brightness and lower than that at lower brightness levels. Color uniformity at 100% brightness didn't perform too badly at all, but I did see a hot spot in the top middle and a darker spot towards the bottom corners. Overall though, not really too bad here, but when I did go down to 50% brightness, things improved somewhat, but we still saw the top middle perform the worst. Luminance uniformity again fell down at 100% brightness. The biggest difference was down the left hand side, but at 50% brightness things got way worse on that left hand side. Color accuracy though on this AOC panel was superb as usual. I didn't really expect much else, coming in with an average of 1.69 delta E pre-calibration with a high of 6.26 and a low of 0.21. However, the high score was only really achieved by a single blue color, which threw off the average somewhat, but still a great score overall. This only got better with the calibration, where I saw the delta E average score drop down to 0.89. So a small improvement, but definitely a welcome one. So talking about gaming on this panel, there are a couple of settings that I do feel you need to decide on inside of the OSD menu. Now the first is the adaptive sync toggle, of which I was able to use G-Sync with my 4070 Ti, though only at the range outlined before at the beginning of the video. Though if you do turn this on, you do remove the ability to toggle on your motion blur reduction technology and also a low input lag setting. Also bear in mind that HDR switched on will also knock out this low input lag setting as well. However, on a separate note altogether, the input lag on this monitor, in part thanks to the high refresh rate that you are getting, makes it extremely hard to even notice a difference between the two types of settings anyway, which in my eyes is only a bonus. Now next though is your 4-stage overdrive settings, which again is there to reduce response times, and I found that the medium setting worked best in my case as it produced the least amount of blurring on a UFO ghosting test. Saying that though, the first test I did run, where everything was absolutely switched off, it also looked pretty decent as well. Running the monitor in Gamer 1 picture profile and opting for NBR, which was set to 20 because I couldn't turn it on otherwise, adaptive sync switched off and my overdrive setting on boost, it gave me a pretty blurry result with a lot of inverse ghosting going on. And similarly to that with overdrive set to strong, it gave me a similar ghosting effect. Turning adaptive sync on and running the test again with overdrive set to medium and strong saw a similar effect with the inverse ghosting, but then my final test with adaptive sync on, NBR sync switched on, and my overdrive setting on medium, it just worked really well. And even in real-time gaming with these settings, I found that playing some Overwatch 2 did look absolutely superb. Though admittedly, I am on Windows 10 still because I'm living in the past, also I've been told, and even still Overwatch 2 at 500 Hz was pretty amazing to experience. Now I think that this monitor does fall down with its TN panel technology, but I must say even though on paper this thing performed exceptionally well when it came to its benchmarks, unfortunately to the eye it does look a bit washed out and viewing angles are okay, but they're not great, especially on the tilt. You've got to be straight on with this monitor, which is definitely how it's meant to be used, sitting close and immersed in the action. But it just means that it's not really built for media consumption, and watching something like John Wick 4 that's just released on Netflix, it relies heavily on a lot of color, and here it just looks a little washed out. But still, you can't take away the fact that this monitor costs half the price of the Zowie we saw a little while ago, and while even at this price tag of £600, I can't recommend it to everybody. But certainly if you're heavily into your esports games, this screen is for you. But if you're more of a casual gamer and like to play single player titles and watch a bit of Netflix or YouTube videos, then £600 for this is a little hard to swallow. It's a decent monitor, it's got a nice sharp image in games, and I know I'm a bit of a fan of AOC now at this point, but they do produce some decent screens, can't deny that. It's a shame about the NBR mode being a little finicky with its ghosting and the colors being a bit washed out even when watching media. It would have been a bit unstoppable if those things settings were improved. But for me though, the adaptive sync technology worked really well with the NDR sync switched on as well. So they're the settings I'm sticking with for now. And I must say, it's going to be extremely hard going back to 165 Hz on Overwatch 2 after using this. Thank you very much for checking out my video review of the AOC AGON Pro AG246FK gaming monitor. If you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to keep up with our latest tech and gaming videos, and also let us know in the comments down below what you thought about this monitor. Is it something that you would purchase for your gaming setup, or are you more of a casual gamer that would like something else for £600? Let us know what you're using in the comments down below. As I say, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.